Hello, hello! Welcome back to round 4 of Swiss here at the League Cup happening at the Collector Store in St. Peters, Missouri. We've got a nice, lovely 3-0 match to round off our round 4. We'll be featuring Charlie again, up against Jeremy. Both players doing their best today at 3-0. Of course, only one of the two can advance to the next stage of the... Or excuse me, well, actually, both of them are likely to advance to the next stage of the tournament. This is a 4-round Swiss with a top 4 cut. So both players fighting here in the final round likely means that they're going to have good resistance. It looks like I don't have any audio on my side. So that's not good. Looks like Charlie is either playing with music off or maybe they have headphones in. I think that's how that affects stuff. So let me go ahead and find some music that we can play in the background. So we're not just hanging out in the back. Let's see here. What can I do? Let's see here. Getting this ready on the side. Sorry for this. Let's see here. Let's see if I've got something here. All right. Hopefully this is good. All right. Anyway, let's talk about the matchup. We have Suicune, Iron Hands. I'd probably need to turn that a little bit. We got Suicune, Iron Hands, Screamtail, Gouging Fire, Zacian-Crowned, and Ting-Lu against Jeremy's Calyrex-Ice, Incineroar, Gholdengo, Amoonguss, Rillaboom, and Gastrodon. I recognize this team from Jeremy. This is the team that Jeremy used at the World Championships of this past year. The World Championships was held in this same regulation, Regulation G. So we should have a lot of experience, or Jeremy should have a lot of experience with this team. It's showing today 3-0 for the start. And we've got a tricky matchup, I'd say. The Suicune on Charlie's side does not like facing off against the Amoonguss, the Rillaboom, or the Gastrodon on Jeremy's side. So, unlike how we saw last round, where Mason's Calyrex was pressured quite heavily by the Suicune, I don't think we're going to see that same thing happen from Jeremy. It looks like we're getting into things now, and yeah, let's see how this goes. So it looks like we're starting off game 1 with Calyrex-Ice and Amoonguss into the Suicune and Gouging Fire on Charlie's side. These Pokemon may look similar, but of course, Gouging Fire being the past Paradox version of Entei, making a completely different Pokemon, and here wanting to threaten a lot of damage into Jeremy's team initially. Unlike the last round, Calyrex on this team from Jeremy is Terra Fire, so that's actually pretty useful, I'd say, in this situation. Although it could take super effective damage from a Stomping Tantrum from Gouging Fire. Gouging Fire is likely more interested in throwing an attack at Amoonguss's way. Amoonguss also could potentially Terrasilize. Terra Water would be fairly safe here. Not likely to get punished by hardly anything. And Spore into Gouging Fire is fairly safe. Even if the Gouging Fire went for the Burning Bulwark, it would not block that Spore because of Burning Bulwark's property of only working on damaging moves. But no, decides instead, I'm going to switch into the Gastrodon. I'm expecting a Scald to come out here. I'll go ahead and get a special attack boost on Gastrodon, and then sweep with the Calyrex-Ice and Gastrodon and Trick Room. So a Terrasalization here from Calyrex-Ice could be punished by a Stomping Tantrum, but we do see at least there's no Terra Ground from the Gouging Fire, and yeah, just a Heat Crash aimed at that Amoonguss's way. Gonna be soaked up much better by this Gastrodon, who also takes the Scald. Will get a special attack boost from that, too. I believe, since we saw the extra animation play, that was targeted at the Calyrex, attempting to burn it, but no burns here. Instead, just Earth Power and Glacial Lance, and oh boy, this combination looks extremely deadly. Earth Power and Glacial Lance looks, I don't think you can switch into this. Like the Suicune here is stuck. Like, the only thing it can do is Snarl down the Gastrodon, but it cannot Scald. And Snarl is going to do such low damage to this Gastrodon, who will be recovering HP from leftovers every turn, too. Also, the Gastrodon can go for Yawn, too, if it wants to. The Calyrex really isn't under any pressure right now, either. Probably could just go for high horsepower if it wanted to, but yeah. Just high horsepower and yawn aimed at the Suicune's way. Probably trying to catch a switch, if I had to guess. Expecting that, hey, the Suicune is useless on the field right now. Maybe, like, force it out. Doesn't get anything, though. Instead, just is a small amount of damage with Stomping Tantrum into the Calyrex. The Gastrodon also takes a Snarl. Calyrex doesn't have its special attack dropped because of its clear amulet item. Not like it would matter anyway. Calyrex is a physical attacker. So now, Suicune really wants to get off the field. I would be shocked if it stays in. If an Earth Power and Glacial Lance combination attack had went into the Gouging Fire last turn, it probably would have been KO'd, but that's not what happens. Instead, it's going to be what happens this turn. Earth Power and Glacial Lance, I think, are still going to easily pick up this KO, but there's no Glacial Lance. Instead, just another high horsepower into the Suicune, chipping it down. The Snarl is going to do, again, just a little bit of damage to the Gastrodon, finally putting it at reduced amount of special attack. Stomping Tantrum into the Calyrex, also doing very low damage. Now the Suicune will fall asleep. The Gastrodon is still relatively healthy, and Calyrex can very confidently click Glacial Lance now. I would expect this to be Glacial Lance and probably a double into Amoonguss. Amoonguss would be a proactive play. It would allow you to, if the Gouging Fire makes a defensive play, then you can go for Pollen Puff into the Calyrex and heal half of its HP back. Which means that Calyrex should be able to set Trick Room later. And look at what we see in the back. We have an Iron Hands and Zacian. Iron Hands, because the Calyrex is not holding that Nevermelt Ice item, will likely not be felled in 2 Glacial Lances. However, a Glacial Lance into a high horsepower probably would do the trick. And we do see a preemptive double from Gastrodon. Again, this is likely Amoonguss coming in. There's Amoonguss. Amoonguss will also be able to pressure Spore on whatever comes in there. Charlie doesn't have any Spore immunities here, except for the Iron Hands, potentially Terastallizing to a Terra Grass, but that would leave it weak to Glacial Lance, so not really exactly what you'd want to do, and Glacial Lance does come out, dealing some damage to the Suicune, and a good chunk into the Iron Hands. So now, this is still a pretty tricky turn. You can use Fake Out into the Amoonguss, but actually you can't. The Amoonguss is Covert Cloak, which means it'll be immune, not immune, but it will not flinch from the secondary effect of Fake Out, meaning that the damage is all you're going to do into this Amoonguss. Amoonguss here could go for a Pollen Puff into the Calyrex. It could Spore the Iron Hands. There's a lot of good things that Amoonguss can do here. The Amoonguss could also just Rage Powder. That would be fairly reasonable. Lots of good options for Jeremy here, I think, on this turn, and not as many good options for Charlie. So we're going to have to see how this turn pans out. It looks like it is just a Fake Out into the Amoonguss. Doesn't read the team sheet. That's going to cost you. Pollen Puff into the Calyrex means that Jeremy gets the best of both worlds here. Instead of Calyrex just flinching and then not getting an attack off, instead now it gets the Glacial Lance off as well. And so that's huge damage into the Iron Hands. The Suicune is still at very low HP. It is holding that Citrus Berry, so it could try to recover health, but that's not going to happen unless Calyrex goes down. And yeah, it doesn't look like that's happening anytime soon. Even if a Scald and Wild Charge lands in the Calyrex, which could be prevented with a Rage Powder, the Calyrex is likely not going to go down, and then should be able to get Trick Room up and continue clicking Lance, Lance, Lance. I imagine here a Pollen Puff in Trick Room is like extremely safe. I think Rage Powder is about as safe. Pollen Puff punishes a slight misplay a little bit more. It would also help recover HP if the Suicune does wake up and go for Scald. Looks like Zacian is going to be the Pokemon coming in now. So, Zacian, the final Glacial Lance resistance on the team, still very healthy, but yeah, it looks like Amoonguss just went for Rage Powder, just keeping it real safe. The Calyrex now will be able to set up Trick Room with no issue at all. The Suicune doesn't even wake up. Next turn, now we're going to see the pressure of Spore and Glacial Lance into this Zacian. So, Calyrex is very likely to get a KO here. I think everything is in KO range. We've seen Suicune is in KO range. Iron Hands might not be. If Iron Hands isn't in KO range, then maybe it can do something, but Gouging Fire is definitely in KO range, so and even if Zacian gets an attack off, what's it gonna do? Behemoth Blade the Amoonguss? You're not damaging this Calyrex, and the Calyrex is the big deal here. So, yes, just that Spore into the Zacian. The Spore, putting the Zacian to sleep may have been better to take, honestly, just so you could take it early, but now you're going to have to do the same thing next turn, and I don't think your other Pokemon are really going to be able to help out that much. Iron Hands can come in and Fake Out the Calyrex, but Amoonguss can still just put the Zacian to sleep, so yeah, there's so many Trick Room turns that you have to get through here, and so much HP on Jeremy's side. Not only that, but there's still a healthy Gastrodon in the back, too. Gastrodon is in a great spot, and there's another unrevealed Pokemon, so one of Rillaboom, Gholdengo, or Incineroar to worry about. there's so many things that have to be considered here by Charlie, and I don't think there's too many options that will actually get you through this one. Because, again, you can't stop the Amoonguss from using Spore this turn into the Zacian, and Calyrex will get a KO with Glacial Lance if you don't fake out that, so yeah, it looks like it's just going to be like Spore into the Zacian, then Glacial Lance and Pollen Puff. Iron Hands or the Gouging Fire have to fake to that. Zacian's going to take a +1 Glacial Lance for its trouble. It will have dealt no damage to the Calyrex. It can't afford a Sacred Sword, so yeah, I don't see a way through this remaining turns of Trick Room. I think Iron Hands being around for Fake Out maybe could try to buy another turn of it, but yeah, just like, even if Zacian gets through all of this, like, it's still not winning damage trades versus the remaining Pokemon. And yeah, there's just that Pollen Puff into Calyrex, topping off its HP, going from about 75% back all the way to 100%. And now here's this Glacial Lance, slower than the Iron Hands, gonna knock it out for sure. The Zacian also takes a sizable chunk. I'd imagine 2 additional Glacial Lances will do the trick. Probably a high horsepower would do it as well, but there's not really any need to. The Zacian is still asleep, didn't take anything in return for that, so like, yeah. If Gouging Fire comes out, it can't stop the Spore. Burning Bulwark will not prevent it from falling asleep, so it has to take this hit. You could opt to Burning Bulwark to potentially reduce the spread damage from Glacial Lance incoming. We do just see a Rage Powder coming out, and yeah, Glacial Lance into the Gouging Fire will definitely knock it out, and definitely put Zacian in the KO range of another Glacial Lance. So it looks like Jeremy should be winning this without even revealing the 4th Pokemon. So a pretty dominating victory here in Game 1. And Zacian doesn't even wake up. Amoonguss there, paying dividends. Easily able to... This Amoonguss Calyrex combination just easily able to run through Charlie's team. Suicune there felt borderline useless. It wasn't able to do hardly anything in this last game, just a Snarl or 2 under the Gastrodon. Behemoth Blade fails to even pick up the KO on Amoonguss. Calyrex will follow up with a Glacial Lance, proving it is the superior signature move, and taking a knockout there. So that's round 1 of, that's game 1 of round 4 of Swiss. So Charlie has to figure out how to adjust here. Suicune, I don't think, was it. Suicune doesn't look like it's going to do anything here. The tricky thing is, how do you adjust? Your Ting-Lu is a really bad option. That's going to be another Glacial Lance weakness. Probably Scream Tail would probably be the most sense, but again, you're just going to be in trouble from Spores here. Spore is just going to be really hard to break through. Because of the... again, the only Spore immunity that you've got is your Iron Hands, which is Terra Grass, which is going to be punished by a Glacial Lance. So without any safety goggles, this combination of Amoonguss and Calyrex-Ice is being extremely, extremely impressive. And we'll have to see how Charlie will be able to adjust. And again, we still had one unrevealed Pokemon from Jeremy, so you have to figure out what that was. If it was Rillaboom could have been used to pressure any Terra Water from the Scream Tail. I could have been used to pick off a weakened Zacian and could have had active Fake Out. Incineroar would also be fairly solid here. Incineroar would be good into the Zacian, reducing its attack. Incineroar is good into the Iron Hands and Gouging Fire as well, reducing their attack. Well, not the Gouging Fire. The Gouging Fire is holding the Clear Amulet item, so that wouldn't take any additional damage. But yeah, it's looking pretty tricky. I do like this adjustment of using Scream Tail here, but that means no Iron Hands. Iron Hands at least could take 2 Glacial Lances. So we'll have to see how this pans out. Let's get into game 2. Spoink Man with a superior trainer card, in my opinion. I believe the Spoink is a bit more on brand than the Chingling, but anyway, we see Incineroar and Calyrex-Ice start off with. Incineroar here is actually in a real bad spot. It cannot intimidate the Gouging Fire. It cannot Parting Shot into the Gouging Fire either. So only the Suicune will be able to be affected by Parting Shot. I imagine the Incineroar is probably just going to switch out straight away into the Gastrodon, though. Looks like we do have a disconnect, though. So a disconnect at 4 and 4 will rule the game as null. It's like it never happened. So both players will get into their get into the match again, and then hopefully we'll have a game free of disconnects. So it looks like, yeah, they fully disconnected. So they'll both have to get into it again. All right, and we are back here with game 2 after a slight disconnect. So nothing too major there. That happens from time to time sometimes. But let's go ahead and get into our game 3. And it looks like he's chosen Carmen. So let me see if I can honor that and pull up Carmen. Let's see here. There we go. That should work. So yeah, we saw those leads from game 2, but the players are not obliged to lead the same way. They could adjust it if they so choose. And it looks like we do see a Calyrex and Incineroar lead still from Jeremy, still a Suicune and Gouging Fire lead from Charlie. So both players agreeing to bring the same Pokemon, or at least the same leads. And so that's nice. We can see this game 2 as it was meant to have been played. So again, here, this Incineroar can only Parting Shot into the Suicune. It's not able to do anything else. I imagine it's probably going to pivot out into Gastrodon, but nope, it looks like it's going to be staying in on the field, at least for this turn. Calyrex-Ice will go for that Terrestrialization to the Terra Fire, though. Terra Fire will reduce the damage of the potential incoming Heat Crash. Heat Crash doesn't actually do that much damage to Calyrex, though. I imagine it's probably 40 base power. Just a fake out into the Gouging Fire, preventing it from moving at all. The Suicune biggest punish could be Scald into Calyrex. Terra Fire does mean it takes more damage, but it notably prevents the burn, and I think that's worth it if you're Jeremy. The fake out into the Gouging Fire also guarantees there's no shenanigans with potentially a Terra Ground Stomping Tantrum dealing heavy damage into it. So the Suicune and Gouging Fire now are a little bit more threatening into the Calyrex. Now it has taken a little bit more damage initially, but I don't know, like, if Incineroar can find its way into either Amoonguss or Gastrodon, which I think it should be able to do either fairly comfortably, then we're going to still be in a similar situation to Game 1, where the power of Earth Power and Glacial Lance will be able to just deal heavy damage. But it looks like it's just a Glacial Lance to start off. That's going to deal a lot of damage to the Gouging Fire, who takes neutral damage from that. Parting Shot into the Suicune will lower its special attack and allow Jeremy to pivot now. Having seen what both the Gouging Fire and Suicune slots are at least not going to become, neither of them switched, I think you can more comfortably go into your Gastrodon now. Gastrodon will guarantee that you will not faint to a combination attack of Scald and Stomping Tantrum that could potentially be aimed Calyrex's way. I imagine Calyrex should be able to comfortably take a Stomping Tantrum alone. Maybe a -1 Scald and Stomping Tantrum won't be enough. Looks like Jeremy thinks so. Goes into the Amoonguss. Amoonguss will also be able to heal up the Calyrex too. But there's no Scald coming out. Instead, just a Snarl, dealing no special attack drops to either Pokemon. Wow, the Calyrex just barely hangs on. If that was a Scald, it would have done enough. But Jeremy saying, I don't think you're going to be. I don't think you're going to go for Scald. You saw I had Gastrodon in Game 1. You saw how much of a problem it was. I think you're going to go for Snarl. Doesn't get the special attack drop on either Pokemon. Calyrex thanks to its Clear Amulet, and Amoonguss thanks to its Covert Cloak. But the special attack drop's not super as important. Now it's a tricky spot, though. Calyrex kind of wants to be healed by Pollen Puff, if I had to guess. Which means that it only can really do just Glacial Lance. You can't safely do Spore. I don't think. I think you're messing around a little bit too much if you go for Spore into Suicune and just the Glacial Lance. But we'll see what happens. It is just the Pollen Puff into the Calyrex, though, covering for that option. Glacial Lance will be resisted by both of these Pokemon. So, but it wasn't a Glacial Lance. Instead, it was a High Horsepower, which nearly KOs the Zacian with a critical hit. Zacian critically surviving the attack, and Scald does little damage to the Calyrex, but that's a huge High Horsepower crit. It means now the Calyrex, or the Zacian, which otherwise would be out of KO range of Glacial Lance, it probably would survive that attack, and potentially draw the attention of a Spore, now has no such luxury. Now a Pollen Puff into Calyrex and Glacial Lance is very safe. You can also go for a Spore into the Suicune and Glacial Lance. That's fairly safe as well. I'm not sure if Glacial Lance would knock out if the Suicune opted to Terrasilize to Terra Grass, so if it doesn't, then potentially you could go for Pollen Puff, and that'd just be the safest thing. We've already seen that Scald is doing less than 50% to Calyrex, so you're definitely out-healing the damage that Pollen Puff is doing. So we'll have to see what these players opt for. It looks like Zacian is just going to protect itself, prevent the Glacial Lance from getting a knockout and getting going. Looks like Spore was just aimed at Suicune, though, saying, even if you Terrasilize the Terra Grass, I think this is fine. I think either I'm going to knock you out with Glacial Lance, now that it's super effective instead of resisted, or that'll take the incoming Scald anyway. So Glacial Lance now into the Suicune. Does enough damage. I think that probably would have picked up a knockout if it was Terra Grass. And now the Amoonguss should have a very, very, very free Pollen Puff. You could Spore into the Zacian, trying to cover for a switch out. But the things that can switch in that would be threatening would be like maybe Iron Hands, maybe Screamtail. I don't know. I think you're pretty comfortable with going for just Pollen Puff from Jeremy's perspective. We will see the last Pokemon revealed on Charlie's team for this game, and it is that Screamtail. So Screamtail will use its booster energy, boosting a speed of no help to it here in Trick Room. The Glacial Lance and Pollen Puff combination, I think, is just going to be so devastating. This Amoonguss and Calyrex has just been so oppressive for Charlie in this game. Glacial Lance comes out. It's going to do some damage to the Suicune, but over half to the Screamtail. And yeah, the Suicune doesn't even wake up. The Suicune now, although Trick Room has returned to normal, this should just be a very, very straightforward Rage Powder Trick Room. I think you could probably even afford to, like, you could probably just get away with not going for Trick Room, and just going for straight away for Glacial Lance or High Horsepower. But I imagine this is going to be Rage Powder Trick Room because, again, I think that covers everything. And then next turn you can go into Gastrodon, assuming you have that. This combination is just like so devastating. The only Pokemon that can take Spore on Charlie's team are Pokemon that will make themselves weak to ice in doing so. So Screamtail Terrasilizes, but yeah, Disable into Amoonguss, not going to help very much. It will stop the Pollen Puff healing for later, but unless Scald gets a Super Mega Crit, I don't think this is KOing Calyrex, and no Super Mega Crit to be found. Amoonguss is now just going to go for Spore into the Calyrex. Excuse me, Spore into the Screamtail. Calyrex likely to just set Trick Room. And yeah, there's that Trick Room going up again. So Amoonguss won't be able to go for the Pollen Puff side healing into the Calyrex. However, it's very safe to go into Gastrodon here. I don't see how you stop that. If you go into Gastrodon, the next turn you have a free Glacial Lance and Earth Power combination attack into the Screamtail. You probably could double into the Suicune if you wanted to. The Suicune's punish on that switch would be Snarl, and that does such low damage to Calyrex that I don't think it's really a punish. I think Earth Power and Glacial Lance will still pick up a KO on the Screamtail regardless, so Amoonguss could also opt to just stay in, go for a Spore into the Suicune. It could opt to go for a Rage Powder to prevent Calyrex from taking even more damage, but yeah, Spore aimed its way at the Suicune. Probably just another Glacial Lance. I haven't been counting how many Glacial Lances have been used, but if Glacial Lance has been maxed out on its power points, I don't think you're going to be running out of those anytime soon. We saw the first Glacial Lance do about half the Screamtail and about a quarter here with the Terra Water. So if it survives another Glacial Lance, then potentially it could get off a Disable into the Calyrex. But it's just so hard to do this. Like all of this time, like you're punished. Like even if all your plays go exactly the way you want them to, are not going to be in the forms of damage. They're going to be in forms of like board positioning that is not in your favor at this point. Glacial Lance does just come out again. Will that pick up the knockdown on Screamtail? It does not, so a damage roll there from all those Glacial Lances. So we can take its first turn of sleep. Let's see if Screamtail can even wake up to do something. It does wake up. Let's see what it opts for. Just the Disable. But the Disable, it looks like, was aimed at the Amoonguss, and Amoonguss has already had its Spore disabled. So, yeah, the Amoonguss has already had its Pollen Puff disabled. You can't disable two moves at once, so now it's just Spore, 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 Lance, Lance, Lance. Rage Powder here from Amoonguss is also fairly safe. You can't really get any better than Glacial Lance into everything else that's not the Suicune. So maybe you just Rage Powder to prevent any damage from going into the Calyrex at all. The most damage that you could do to punish that would be a Snarl, and that would do almost nothing. So yeah, just a Rage Powder coming out from Amoonguss. preventing any possible damage into that slot. Calyrex's Glacial Lance, if that was a disable into the Calyrex, it would have had to rely on high horsepower, but doesn't even have to do that now. Can continue to click Glacial Lance, and now every Pokemon on Charlie's team is in KO range of that Glacial Lance attack. So it's looking pretty good, if I had to say, for Jeremy. This combination was so good in Game 1, and looks like it's going to be so good in Game 2 as well. And yeah, Pollen Puff is also worn off, so this is the freest Pollen Puff Glacial Lance of all time. Even if you got a bunch of successful Protects in a row, stalled out all of the Trick Room turns, which I guess there's only one left. So what? You did nothing. The Amoonguss is still at full HP. We've already seen it won't faint to a single Behemoth Blade. The Zacian is also already switched in and out, so even a critical hit Behemoth Blade will not knock out this Amoonguss. So it's just so easy for Jeremy from this point. A Pollen Puff and a Glacial Lance will threaten to knock out on both of these Pokemon. The only thing I can think of where he could potentially come back from this is if Glacial Lance runs out of power points, but I'm pretty sure Jeremy has not used all 8 yet. So yeah, I mean, at this point, you can just Rage Powder and attack. There's just a double protect, so maybe you go for that. You can just get 2 KOs here. You can set Trick Room up again. I don't think Amoonguss will even faint to the combination of Scald and Behemoth Blade. You kind of have to hope that, yeah, Jeremy just doesn't even Rage Powder with Amoonguss, but, like, there's no reason not to Rage Powder. Amoonguss shouldn't faint to this attack. I think you would need 2 critical hits to knock it out. But let's see if it gets the first one. Nope. And Scald is going to just do a little bit of damage to the Amoonguss as well. A burn here is very unimpactful. We do just see the Glacial Lance picking up a double KO. So, although there were a bunch of Ice-type resistances on Charlie's team, nevertheless, it doesn't really matter if you have Ice-type resistances if you get hit by, you know, like 7 Glacial Lances. Like, eventually they're going to do enough. And with 2 attack boosts on top of that, there is no way that this Gouging Fire will be able to take it. Even if Terrestrialization was available, and even if you use Stomping Tantrum into the Calyrex, I don't think that would be enough. Even a critical hit I don't think would be enough. Jeremy is nice and doesn't protect to switch out Amoonguss, letting Charlie get a pity KO onto the Amoonguss, but this Glacial Lance or High Horsepower will be enough to pick up the remaining amount of HP on Gouging Fire from Calyrex. So, pretty dominating set there, if I had to say, from Jeremy. It looked like the team matchup was heavily in his favor. So, yeah, really solid play from Jeremy. Despite that disconnect interrupting the round, didn't affect his mental at all. Was able to just continue and use Amoonguss and Calyrex effectively to win that set.